I'm talking about those salespeople specifically that are listening and maybe confused of why wasn't I successful over the last 6 months, or why wasn't I successful over the past 12 months? And I was working hard, I was doing all this, and it was doing activity, but not doing the right activity.
Hello Sales Nation, and welcome to today's episode of the Salesman podcast. On today's show we have Dave Thompson, who is the CRO of The List Inc. And today we're looking into, and Dave's sharing his insights on the mistakes that new sales reps make so that we can engineer them out of everyone who's listening who is new to sales so that you can have success quicker. Simple as that. You can find out more about Dave over at thelistinc.co.uk. The show notes are available for this episode over at salesmanpodcast.com. And with all that said, let's jump into today's episode. Hey Dave, and welcome to the Salesman podcast.
Hey, thanks for having me, Will. Appreciate it.
You're more than welcome, sir. I'm glad to have you on. I'm glad to have another practitioner on the show, someone who's in the trenches, someone who can give legitimate insights to all of this versus, I've talked about it on the show about this time, so I won't rant about it, but versus the other content creators out there. So I appreciate this, and I appreciate you taking the time and the effort to come on the show, mate. And the topic of the show, I want to cover why new reps fail, because I'm sure, and there might be data on this in the industry, and I don't want to put you on the spot and ask for any of that kind of stuff, but I'm sure that there's loads of great reps that don't make it through that first 12 months, and there's probably lots of people who shouldn't be in sales who get through that 12 months, so we can perhaps touch on that. But of all the emails that come to me from the audience, a good chunk of them are from people who are 0 months, 3 months, 6 months into the progression in the career of sales. So there's going to be a lot to go out with the audience very specifically in this episode, but I think it's going to be relevant for everyone else as well. But I want to start with a super open-ended question, and that is, in the first 12 months, I guess, if we have that as a cutoff point, we'll start with the biggest, and then we'll work our way down the list. But what is the one thing that new sales professionals struggle with in that first 12 months that doesn't just mean that they miss target, but means that they are not enjoying the whole process as well?
Sure. And there are obviously a multitude of various reasons of why new sales reps fail. And there are a couple major reasons that I see why sales reps fail within that 12-month period. Or a lot of times you can identify what's going to happen in terms of that new sales rep success or failure within that first 3 to 6 months. And a lot of it has to do with persistence, I think, or the lack thereof. And this is especially true for usually some newly minted sales reps, or especially if you're trying to build out an SDR team. This is of critical importance. But so what I see a lot of times is that a new sales rep will come on board and they'll do tons of research, finding the right individual and more importantly, the right company to target. That would be a great fit for the company. They target 3 to 4 really solid contacts, VP of sales, et cetera. They get all that information. They find them on LinkedIn. They extract the email and all the pertinent information they need to contact them. They put them into their CRM, and then they send out 1-2 emails, and that's it. And they're done. And they move on to the next one. So there's a real lack of persistence that I see in terms of those that don't last a very long time. And you can just go through the notes. You can see a lot of times a lot of high activity. Like, these people are great at researching companies, finding the right contacts, finding really solid individuals at that company as well. But after 1 or 2 outreaches, they're moving on, and then there's doing it all over. So they're spending a lot of time finding a new company, finding new contacts, and not reaching out as much as they should. So that's certainly one of the major ways. And what I always recommend is fully work an individual for a good 3 weeks minimum, and that's probably about 5 outreaches, various types of outreaches over the course of a week. So it could be 3 emails and 2 phone calls. So that's certainly one, is that persistence. But
let's stop on this a second, because this isn't just new salespeople. This is me. This is everyone else in the industry as well, other than a few people who perhaps their personality is a bit more, tenacious, and they want to grab hold of everything. They don't want to let anything go. That's not how I'm wired. So I have to force myself and have process to be persistent. So Why do they not persist? Is this a effort in they don't want to, pester people? They feel bad about it, or is it the other way around? Do they expect that the prospects are going to be polite enough to reply to them, and they've just not had that experience yet to understand that you are trying to kind of like suck value from them. You're trying to get a bit of their time so that you can add value. So you've got to break through that barrier. Is it, as I said, is it that they are kind of too soft, or is it that they are just kind of too polite and naive to the whole scenario?
I don't think it's the latter. I think it's more the former and I think a lot of it stems from lack of organization, to be honest with you. So we use Salesforce as a CRM here. The vast majority of sales organizations that I know of have some type of CRM or some type of way of organizing notes and tasks and to-dos and that sort of thing. But I see, even with those systems in place, that a lot of times it's not well organized per that individual. So you can have tasks set up, and then you get to a point where you may have so many tasks set up that you can't get to every single one. And as opposed to taking, maybe 20 minutes and running through every single one of those tasks and really cleaning it up, you get behind, and then you get further behind, and then you get further behind, where you almost get to the point where you're not even using your CRM anymore, and you're moving. yeah, we all have. And you're using maybe you're going back to Gmail or Outlook, or you're just relying on email. So it certainly takes a little extra effort and time to go in there and clean up all your tasks, all your to-dos, all your follow-ups. But it's so critically important to your success, because a lot of these things, I don't think, 90% of the time, I don't think these sales reps' intention is to have this type of stuff slip through the cracks. I don't think they are confident, like you said, overly confident, where they think their messaging is so good that someone should be getting back to them within, one or two emails. It's really a lack of that organization, and figuring out a way to keep yourself organized on a daily basis. And, what I recommend is not only having those tasks and to-dos, but being very specific in the subject line, or marking them somehow so you can organize those to-dos as well in terms of the level of importance. So you have, your demos or your web tours or your follow-ups or et cetera, where, you're trying to close a deal, and then, behind that is maybe you're following up from a web tour or demo, and below that is, cold call email number 3, and below that is, actually going out and finding new prospects. But some people fall in the trap of going out and finding new prospects and continuing that, and having a lot of stuff fall through the cracks, as I mentioned before. So, a lot of that stems, again, from lack of organization internally, more than, them thinking that, they should get a response after an email or two.
So finding new prospects, why is that? And because this is counterintuitive to what I would have assumed you would have said. I would have thought you would have said the new salespeople aren't doing enough prospecting, so their pipelines aren't full enough, so that they're having to. And this is what I've done in the past as well. When I've first started in new roles, I've then not had enough stuff to go at, so then I've been desperate at the people that I've gone at, and that's an off-putting conversation and tone of conversation to have with someone when you're not fully open and confident that if they don't close, there's someone else that will. And there's a whole other rabbit hole right there, Dave. But it surprises me that you say that people are doing too much faffing. I guess, would that be a way to describe it? Too much faffing in the prospecting phase rather than not enough outreach in the prospecting phase?
Yeah, well, it's both. Obviously, I'm talking about those salespeople specifically that are listening and maybe confused of why wasn't I successful over the last 6 months, or why wasn't I successful over the past 12 months? And I was working hard, I was doing all this, and it was really doing activity, but not doing the right activity. But there's also certainly that other issue of people that aren't prospecting enough. But that's a lot as a sales manager or anyone else, or even as that sales reps. It's pretty easy to go in and identify, hey, I'm not doing enough to build my funnel. That's pretty obvious. So if you're out of a job in 6 months, and you most likely you're going to know at that point that I probably wasn't doing enough from the prospecting angle, or I didn't have enough on my funnel. Frankly, I wasn't working hard enough to be successful.
Okay.
I really took it as an angle more those individuals that they're trying hard, putting forth a lot of effort, doing a lot of activity, and then finding out 6 months down the road that they're pacing well behind goal, and they're trying to figure out why that is.
Okay, so let's come back to persistence for a second then. For the audience who are listening to this now who are going, right, that totally resonates with me. I know that I need to spend more time with probably fewer but higher qualified prospects. How do they implement this? Is this a case of process of you've got to have X number of touch points, you've got to do it over X number of days, use your CRM to manage yourself to do it? Is that the best way to implement this? Or is this happening, or do we need to have a conversation about the psychology of it all and the kind of background conversation of feeling worthy enough to keep asking and all this kind of stuff? From your experience with your guys and girls in the office, what holds them back? Is it lack of process, or is it the psychology behind it?
Generally it's a lack of a process, I think. So putting together a process for that individual, or for yourself, for that individual, I was talking from a sales management aspect, but going in and really having a process in place in terms of, here's how I'm going to follow up with every single one of this is how many touch points I need to be successful over the course of, these next 2 weeks for that specific account or for that individual. I think that's really important. And then I'm going to set up a task every other day and go about, introducing that into Salesforce or whatever, so that every single day when I log into Salesforce, I've got that to do right in front of my face and I know it's important and I've got to do it. So that's, I think, really, really important, is to figure out what the process is. And then I think also trying to organize your tasks by the most important. So yeah, there are going to be days when you have a lot of things going on. You're going to have to put out fires and you're not going to be able to get to every single task that you have. But it's important that next day to go in and then figure out what needs to be done from yesterday and today, prioritize that, and the things that can be pushed off, like going after new accounts, for example, you push that off and you get to the most important items of that day right out of the gate.
So we'll come back to touch points in a second, because I want to dive into that and I want to get real practical with that for the audience. But have you come across the bullet journal before, or the way of doing a journal, and it's called the bullet journal?
I had not, no.
So I'm totally unorganized. I'm even though I putting out hundreds of hours of podcast and other video and written content a month. If you saw the behind the scenes, if the audience did, they'd be laughing their head off about how unorganized it all is. And even to this day, the only way I can stay organized to even the smallest extent, the only reason that everything doesn't fall apart is because I have this bullet journal process of managing my tasks. And you kind of half described it then. So basically what I do is I have a list of tasks throughout the day. I mark, a number of check boxes essentially that I write out every morning. And throughout the day, I will then label them like in priority of like 1 to 5 in order that they've got to get done. So this morning I had to edit 2 podcast episodes. So to go out today and to tomorrow, because I'm away tomorrow morning. So that was top priority. Then the next one was to prepare for the interviews that are happening next week, so that I don't have to stress over them over the weekend. Then third, because it comes in the time of day and that, it was to speak to you, Dave, and the other 4 or 5 people that I've got lined up for shows this afternoon. And then when all that's done, I've got silly things like reply to this email, do all this kind of stuff that's not really that important. And what tends to happen then is, of course, you don't get everything done every day. So the next morning, tomorrow morning, I will sit down and everything that didn't get done the day before, I write them out again in full on the next page, and then I'll prioritize them again. And then what happens is the tasks that don't really need doing, they go across 3 or 4 days, and then I go, sod it, I'm just not going to bother with that. And I wish I would have done this in sales, because I spent so much time fighting fires, ringing round and doing customer service jobs that, although it was important over the longer term, could easily have been put off for a week or 2 and could have been delegated to someone else within our team, whether it's getting a customer service rep to just reply to a phone call or an email to find out what the customer wanted, rather than me spending an hour on the phone with them, having a chat about all kinds of stuff. That would have driven revenue and made my life a lot easier. So I'll link to this in the show notes. It's called the bullet journal. Basically, You can do it in any notebook. It's a system as opposed to a product. So I'll link to that. I'll share it over with yourself, Dave, as well. But that's the only way that I can. It's the only way I can remain. It's even in the 1% of control of what I do with everything that we do with the interviews and the live events and the products and the content that we put out. And it just struck me that you mentioned a couple of elements of it there, of how I guess you kind of organize your day as well. But I want to come back to touch points. And again, getting really practical for the audience here, especially if you're brand new to sales.
Yep.
Should we, when we're new to sales, just go to our sales manager and then even go up the food chain if they don't know and just say, hey, sales manager, how many touch points do we need? How out of your data for the team, should they know this? Should they know these numbers and they can give it to us and then we can put it into practice rather than us trying to experiment and faff around and waste time and procrastinate, essentially experimenting with number of touch points, ways of touching points, number of phone calls, how to leave a voicemail. Should a sales manager have all this information that they can give to us to get us started?
They should. They absolutely should. But if not, one thing I would do as a new rep as well is not only go to my sales manager, but I would pick off, who are the top reps? What are they doing right to be at that level? Why are they the top reps? And that's probably where you'll get a lot of good intel as well. What are they doing specifically? How are they staying organized? How many touch points are they using as well? How are they organizing their day to day? That's the first thing I would do on, anytime I've gone in a new sales position. One of the first things I did, obviously, I spent a lot of time with my sales manager, but I tried to spend as much time as possible with the top sales reps to figure out what they're doing to be successful, and try to emulate as much of that as humanly possible.
What should I want to make a list from this. We'll put it in the show notes. So sure. How people or how the top sales reps organize their day, how many touch points they have. What else should we be asking these top sales reps so that we can, model them, emulate their process, and what else do we need to know from them other than, just spending time with them in the field or in the office or however else we go about it? And this is so good, mate. Genuinely, this is going to be super practical for the audience. What other data or what other steps should we be directly taking from them and just without a shadow of a doubt, without a question, just putting into our day? That's
a great question. And, it's funny. A lot of the top reps, a lot of the sales reps, if you ask them, why are you successful? The vast majority of them, they don't know. A lot of it is just inherent. They're inherently great salespeople and they stay organized and they got processes down. But for them to articulate that, sometimes it's difficult. So what I recommend is obviously having that conversation with the sales rep and trying to figure out what they're doing and seeing if they can articulate it. But better yet, being in the car with them if you're going off site, or jumping in. Are they having a phone call with someone? Can you listen in? How are they talking with these individuals? How are they closing deals? And then, they're generally with a lot of those CRMs, there's a lot of transparency. So you can go in and see how that individual's setting up their tasks or how they're logging their calls. So they have very detailed information that they can go back on when having follow-up calls for them. So, it's a little bit of spine and a little bit of listening in when they're on those actual calls. But a lot of times just having that conversation, I found, like some of the top reps, they just can't articulate that in terms of why they're just so successful. They just are because of, X, Y, and Z. They're doing it so well, but it's hard for them to explain that. And then I also have another thing, if we want to go back, I'm not sure if we want to do this now, but, in terms of why, part of the process that I think is a little bit broken is an over-reliance on email or other tools, technology tools out there. And I see a lot of individuals shying away, especially the younger sales reps that I'm having, shying away from making phone calls for a lot of different reasons. One, it's harder and harder these days to actually get a phone number from an individual. But, I don't know if they're as comfortable. A lot of times they haven't gone through the SDR, they haven't done the cold call. So when they just jump into a sales rep role, they're just not comfortable with that. And they're not getting the type of response rate that they used to maybe. These are more tenured reps, not getting the type of response rate they used to in terms of having someone else call them back. But, you need to really change up your various touch points and not be over reliant on just email or just LinkedIn emails and using the phone. So why the phone is so important, the likelihood that someone's going to call you back is about zero. I'll tell you that right now. That's the honest to goodness answer. But when you're sending someone an email and also leaving them a voice message, I get less and less people leaving me voice messages every day in terms of people cold calling me. And a lot of times they're just sending me emails. But when they're calling me and leaving a voice message, which generally is only a few times a week, I know that those people are on me and they're going to stay on me. So usually when I get that second voicemail, I don't like that blinking red light on my phone. I've just got to tell you, it's like having those unread emails in my inbox. I don't like it. So I always go in and I listen to it. And then I end up finding that individual's email because I know they're going to continue to hound me. And I send them an email and saying, yes, I'm interested. Let's have a conversation. No, thanks. Or let's talk again in 6 months. So they're getting an answer out of me a lot more quickly by picking up the phone, giving me a call, leaving me a voice message, just because I know that they're gonna stay on me. They're going to be persistent. I just don't want those continued voice messages and emails and that. But these days also I'm getting so many emails that I can sniff out as a marketing email right out of the gate, or it's just not customized to me. And there's tons of fantastic technologies out there that really every sales rep can really have at their disposal with their own drip marketing campaign. It's really easy to find an individual on LinkedIn. Being able to ascertain their business emails real easy with a lot of tools out there. And then a couple clicks of the mouse, you dump it into some type of marketing automation platform that you now as a sales rep have. So, well, that's pretty easy, right? Find the right contact, get the email, and then dump it into this marketing automation resource or platform that you have. But you end up sending very, very impersonalized email. You can attack a lot of people at once and send out emails to thousands where maybe before you were only sending out to hundreds. But the quality of that message is diminished so much that your response rate goes from maybe 30 to 40% if you're sending out really solid cold calls down to 5%. So I think you need a really, really solid balance of using technology like that, but also spending a little bit extra time researching about that company, researching about the individual, most importantly, and sending out a very curated or very personalized message to that individual that's going to increase your response rate. So what I like to do and what I tell my team is really to have kind of a tier level of prospects. So you have your tier one prospects that, those are your top prospects. These are fantastic prospects, would be great clients. So you want to really spend some time digging into that company, digging into their to that individual, and sending a very personalized message to them. And then your tier two, solid prospects. Those are probably best suited for that email, whatever drip marketing resource that you're currently using. And then you have usually a tier over there that's maybe not the best prospects, but they're great for your A/B testing. So send out through that marketing automation resource, one email, and then have a completely different email that you send to them. And a lot of times you're getting pretty good analytics from these, so you can see what's getting the best open rate, and then you can use that on your tier two prospects.
So you brought up a really interesting point here, and I like that you've come up with this, and you brought it up as a practitioner, as someone who's managing a sales team versus someone who's just talking about marketing automation, because this splits the industry right now, and I think it's going to go how you just described. I think salespeople should go all in learning marketing and learning messaging and learning the scientific advertising, the book. Every salesperson should have that and read through it and understand it. And where I'm going with this is, I'm going to ask you in a second a huge dividing question. You're going to go you're going to go one side of the fence or the other. So okay. A lot of sales, less practitioners and more sales experts and gurus that come on the show preach that salespeople should old, 6 months, 6 years, whatever, they should be selling. They should be on the phone. They should be sending emails to set up a phone call, and that's it. A lot of people like yourself from the practitioner level, and this is where I sit because I'm using it every day myself for a whole number of other reasons, are on this side of salespeople perhaps should be learning some of the skills of marketing. They should be, as what you just described is the way I think sales is going to turn into, of you have your, as you described, tier one, people that are actively looking to buy. You've hit them at the right time. You need to get on the phone with them. No faffing around with drip campaigns and emails. But then you've got everyone else that you've contacted, and you want to nurture them and build a relationship with them. So I'm not sure if it's going to be drip marketing emails where they're not customized and they don't have so much of your personality, and they're not adding value through sharing content or resources or ideas and industry knowledge. I'm not sure if we need to go all that side of it, because that's clearly marketing can do that better than what an individual salesperson can, the marketing team. But I'm excited that you've mentioned this, because as I said, it's an ongoing 50-50 split with the guests on the show. So let me ask you just very, very bluntly, is that the way that sales is going? Should salespeople right now, the new people specifically listening to the show, should they be having an eye on marketing and reading marketing books and understanding drip email and automation, email automation? Should that be a focus for them to set them up for perhaps not now, but in 18 months, 24 months of the way that everything's going?
I do, absolutely. That's the way everything is trending. Some of my top reps are the best at utilizing that software in the right manner, right? So, you can go in and you can, the good thing about a lot of those platforms, you can go in and you can put, 1,000 emails and send out one specific email, but you can get very specific in terms of, finding a specific industry or region and going after a very targeted group. But it still doesn't get to the level of personalization what I think you need in terms of sending out emails to those individuals, where I'm actually talking about some content that they put out, specifically that individual, or mentioning where they went to school or anything like that. But yeah, the more that sales, very much the team that we have in place is becoming more of a hybrid, and they are learning more and more about marketing and drip campaigns and things like that. And especially for smaller sales organizations or startups, you're not going to have access to a marketing department that's going to be feeding you leads every single day. It's just not going to happen. So the more you can learn about marketing and sales, and you become kind of that hybrid role, I promise you the more successful you're going to be, not only now, but especially, as you mentioned, 12 months from now or 24 months from now, because that's certainly the way the industry is going.
And let me just dive in that level deeper, and you will, again, as a practitioner, you will have very specific thoughts on this. Should salespeople be building, obviously it depends on how the contract's worded and all this kind of stuff, but should salespeople be building a list of advocates within the industry that they're constantly adding value to for themselves that does lead generation for the business they work for? Or should it all be done internally and structured internally? Does that make sense? What I'm saying is, if I see it, and this is how I envisioned it, and again, contracts are worded in such a way that a lot of the time, whatever you do in your sales role belongs to the company that you're working for. So that aside for 1 second, I see the number of salespeople reducing in the industry. I see the people that remain will be somewhat known industry experts within the industries that they are in. They will dominate all the lead gen opportunities, and they'll be putting out content. But I see them as individuals having, so for example, with me, medical device sales, I would have a list of all the urologists on my territory. So it might only be 50, 60 urologists, but I will have my own newsletter that'll go out to them. I will be sharing my own thoughts on the industry, and that's how I'll be using it to create an asset for myself, which is transferable between different companies. Is that how you see it working, or do you see it being that you will have an internal email list that the company owns that will be company branded, that perhaps you will write, but will go out on a drip campaign through the company's servers and email addresses and that side of thing?
Yeah, it's probably a little both, but I certainly see, and LinkedIn is a great example, because, you're creating the content, you're building those connections. And then, if you do leave the company, that's going with you. Now, I know there've been, various reports that I've read of companies that are going through and, changing on people's LinkedIn profiles and trying to stop people from taking a lot of the contacts, which I guess is another whole nother podcast.
You don't need to
maybe.
give your thoughts on that personally.
Yeah, no, I'm certainly not going to do that. But
Yeah.
yeah, I think that personal branding is huge. I know a lot of my reps are actually spending 30 minutes to an hour every week and putting out branded content on LinkedIn to become that expert
Yep.
In the field. So I think that's, yeah, what you bring up is a great point, and I think that's really important moving forward is being that expert. And also, I talk a lot about the drip marketing and campaigns and whatnot, but for a new rep, I would certainly want my company to also have some type of platform, sales intelligence platform that's very industry specific to help me as well. So if I was an ad sales rep, I'd certainly want some type of platform that provided me all the key marketing, advertising contacts within the brand, what media buying and agencies they're working with, what they're spending on media dollars, that sort of thing. That certainly helps to build your pipeline right out of the gate, as opposed to spending maybe 3, 6 a year building that pipeline of good contacts. And you can really get rolling right out of the gate, as opposed to taking a while to build that pipeline on its own. I've talked to a lot of sales leaders that they don't invest in any technology for their sales reps because they feel that's their job to go out and find contacts. What they don't understand is that's what that's costing them. To have your solid sales reps spending 70% of their time finding the right emails and finding the right talking points to these individuals. So, and we're getting to the point where even there are a lot of resources out there providing information that you can use to help with not only the right contacts and making that phone call, but provide information to help you have solid conversations right out of the get-go. So there's a lot of technology out there, but I guess to answer your question, yeah, I do see the sales role and morphing into kind of a marketing. Let's just say that you'll need that marketing information moving forward in your sales role. You're going to have to be more of a hybrid moving forward, for sure.
I agree, and I just think it very simply, for new salespeople listening to this, for people who've been doing it for longer than what I did, for people who've been doing it for a decade or so, I think it's going to turn sales on its head. I think when you've got that content, when you've got that list of people that you've not spammed with buy my product, you've built a relationship with them at scale to some extent. If it's 50 or 60 people in your geographic region or your patch or your territory, if it's 1,000 people, you need to hand that off to marketing, and they can do a better job than what you can from a branding perspective. But from the a list of 10 to 50 people, perhaps, if we can call it that you're actively pursuing right now, having automation in place so that emails go out in a drip manner. And what I mean by this, I guess, just so we don't lose anyone, a drip campaign of you get someone's email address, it goes into a piece of software. That day it sends them an email saying, hey, I'd love to build a relationship with you. I'm going to send you XYZ. Then the next day it automatically sends them the industry report that your company's put together that adds loads of value. The next day it sends them a series of videos or your insights that you've gathered from your customers. So you go and ask your best customers, what's going on in the industry, and you can add that extra kind of level of knowledge, and obviously that sets you up as an expert in the eyes of the person get the emails. And then perhaps on the 4th or 5th email it says, hey, I'd love to just have a phone call with you. I think that will work in my mind for the sales professional. But when we get further down the line of it's 7 or 8 emails that are not really from a person, they're from like a persona, or they're from the company, that I don't think salespeople should be messing with that. I think that's a waste of their time, and it's a waste of their resources as well. And tell me if I'm wrong, we'll wrap up with this, Dave, because I want to instill this in the mind of everyone who's new, who's listening to the show, who's new to sales, that the salesperson's biggest advantage is the fact that they can have one-on-one conversations, isn't it? Versus marketing, it's very difficult to put that into practice.
Yes, yeah, no, absolutely. So even going back to that point, I even have sales reps that are sending content that they find from a multitude of various places, sending that to their prospects. Is maybe their prospects aren't ready to buy, so they're sending specific content with no call to action, but they're just, essentially they are, like you said, they're becoming kind of a marketing arm as well, and sending that content. And I think a lot of times there's too much call to action, and like call me,
Yep.
call me, and very little value that I'm at least seeing on the emails that I'm getting on a daily basis. And another thing to pay attention to is just the length of some of these emails that I'm getting. I'm getting 4 or 5 paragraphs long of, hey, here's our company, and here's 5 paragraphs about what we do. I mean, I in no way, shape, or form do I have the time to read 5 paragraphs of a cold email when I'm getting 200 of these a day. So the shorter you can be with those emails, your response rate is going to go through the roof. So, I mean, ideally, if you can get that down to 2 to 3 sentences with a call to action, fantastic. That's really where you want to be. But once you click the enter button and you start with paragraph 2, you're decreasing your odds big time of getting a response from that individual.
Yeah, definitely. It should be I pitch the audience on this. You should be able to, the prospect or whoever you're emailing should be able to reply in 1 sentence. They should be able to, yes or no. So that kind of like ties up your call to action there. But then it also should be readable on one screen of the iPhone. That's how I target everything.
That's a great point, because what I did with a team a few months back is we sent out an email, and then we all looked at that email on a mobile device. And it's interesting because you have who it's from, you have the subject, and then you also have about the first 5 to 10 words of that email. So if you're spending that space with saying, "Hey Bob, hope you're well," or something like that, I'm going to delete it immediately. But if you can fill something that intrigues them within that first sentence or that first half of the sentence, the likelihood they're going to continue to read that on their mobile device goes up substantially. And over 50% of all emails are first opened up on a mobile device at this point, and not on a computer. So with that in mind, you really have to start sending out messaging and sending out email, knowing that the first time a prospect opens that, most likely it's going to be on a mobile device.
Yeah. When you've got them on the mobile device, you've got their attention. I just don't think you've got any attention whatsoever when there's and I have this, similar to you, I get hundreds of emails every day from the audience and from other people within the industry at the moment, everyone's trying to get me to do roundup blog posts, which I don't think are very useful anyway for anyone, but that's a bugbear of mine at the moment. I get like 4 or 5 email pictures of that at the moment. So if they come up on my phone, they just get swiped and archived. I don't even read them anymore. So that's spot on. And with that, Dave, I've got one final question for you, mate, to ask everyone that comes on the show before you tell us a little bit more about where we can find about you and everything that you do, the company you work for and that side of things. And that is, if you could go back in time and speak to your younger self, what would be the one piece of advice you'd give him to help him become better at selling?
That's a great question. The one piece of advice, God, there's so much advice I'd give myself. I think the biggest hurdle for me back in the day was just getting over the hump of picking up the phone and making a phone call. Back in the day when I first started out as, I was a cold caller. They call them SDRs these days, or BDRs. I had a lot of hesitancy to pick up the phone. So I would find just about anything else to do other than pick up that phone. But I had a great manager to pretty much force me to do it day in, day out. And within, about a month, I was comfortable in it. And I think that really propelled me to the next level and gave me the confidence I needed in all aspects of sales to really go out there and do well. But anytime you're hesitant to do anything, just do it, get over the hump, and you're going to be successful eventually. So.
Yeah, brilliant. I always frame this because I have it all the time. I've talked about on the show. I did the audio version of the show, and then I was super nervous to do the video side of things. Then you do it 3 times. Why was I bothered about that? And then live events coming up this year. I've been asked to both speak and to record live interviews at a bunch of events. And at first I was like, I don't know about that. And then you do the first one, and again, it's absolutely fine. And it's just, I think that hesitance, that distraction, that want to procrastinate on doing those key tasks is, to me now, in hindsight, is a sign that there's some growth there. There's an opportunity to improve yourself, whether it's sales, whether it's cold calling, whatever it is. So I appreciate that, Dave. And with all that, mate, tell us where we can find out more about you. Tell us more about the list partners and that as well. and yeah, everything that you're up to, because there's you got a number of products and services on the go that are going to be able to add value to a decent subset of our audience here.
Sure, no, absolutely. So we our biggest brand that we have underneath the List Partners Inc., which is our holding company, is called Winmo, WINMO.com, and that's a product that's a sales intelligence solution geared specifically to ad agencies, ad sales reps. So any media companies out there, any ad technology companies, any nonprofits and sports teams as well, use us to find the right contacts in mid to large size brands, marketing, advertising, decision makers. We tie in all their agency relationships as well. So not only do you know the key contacts at Home Depot, for example, but you know all the contacts at the media buying agency as well, working on the Home Depot account, media spend information. There's a lot of ways to slice and dice the information as well, and to put them in those kind of drip marketing automation resources that we were talking about. So that's one of them. The other brand that we have is called Catapult New Business. Catapult New Business is an outsourced business development group specifically for agencies. So agencies that don't have maybe the manpower to go out and cold call and prospect. We have a team in place that's a very tenured team that goes out and sets up qualified meetings for all of our agency clients. And then we have a brand new product called Local Lead, and it's similar to Winmo. It's a sales intelligence solution, but it's built specifically for local media sellers. And that's also providing key contacts and media spend information on companies within your territories, et cetera. So that is something we just launched this month, actually.
Amazing stuff. Well, congratulations on that. I will link to everything that we talked about in the show notes of this episode over at salesman.red. And with that, Dave, I want to thank you for your insights. Again, thank you for giving these practitioner level insights. And take this as a compliment, as a stroke of your ego, mate. What you're describing with drip campaigns and marketing optimization in the world of sales, there's not many people talking about that right now. So you're clearly ahead of the game with it. So I appreciate your insights, appreciate your time, and I want to thank you for joining us on the Salesman podcast.
Thanks a lot, Will. I appreciate it.